Is yours truly, Pastor Marshall. Another thought. Remember on the triclinium table, the previous segment, we were talking about, um, you know, the Last Supper and what it really looked like. Look at Peter, though. And here's where the whole discussion, when you start looking at the Gospels and start looking at, when they were fighting about who's going to be greatest and everything. And it's very interestingly how Peter sits at the servant, the servant side, and the servant side of the triclinium was to wash the hands. Had easier access to go out and in to help with the food. They actually would wash the feet. Remember, the sandals that they used, your feet would get dirty as you're walking, and so the servant would wash the feet. So he didn't want to wash nobody's feet. He didn't want to, do that. So Messiah said, well, I'll set the example. Okay, I will demonstrate it. And this is what Messiah meant when he said, take my yoke. That's a rabbinical term. That was him being a rabbi, him among the culture. That's why it's very important not to view the scriptures from a Western perspective. You have to get into the culture to understand the dynamics. That's one of my principles for hermeneutics is culture, understanding culture. Context is another one. There's another two that I live off of. They're very broad categories, but culture is important. And when you say, take my yoke upon you and learn of me, that was a invitation for a person to follow a rabbi. The yoke was his teaching. And that's why he said, my yoke is easy, because in comparison to the Pharisee doctrine, which you read earlier up, and you start comparison to the doctrine of the Pharisees, you would begin to see something profound. And he starts to say, look, my yoke is easy. Okay. So what that is an imitation. And the yoke, you got to look at the farming of the time. They would actually, you'll see this in the Torah. In the book of Devarim. The book of Devarim is the book of Deuteronomy. And you'll see something profound is that one of the cultural things, they would never yoke an ox with a donkey together, obviously. And that's for a whole nother teaching. But you have also, they would take the older ox and put it with a younger ox. And the younger one is to learn by being yoked with the older. And so this yoke kind of united them together. And so this is the same thing what Yeshua, because Kepha or Peter was following Messiah, he's demonstrating servanthood. And so he says, look, you're not going to, I'll show you how it's to be done. And that's the yoke. So that's more insight into the yoke. Hopefully you loved it. But he didn't want to be a servant. And one Greek word I will use, I know we always talk about diakonos. We get the word deacon. We talk about other ones. But a doulos is another one. Diakonos is another one. But I'm going to give you another one that I don't hear too many people talk about. Is another Greek word that deals with servant. Is huparetes. Is from hupa, which is the preposition in Greek, which implies under. Okay. Eretes is from the word hereso, which actually means to row. It means an oarsman, an under rower. And what does that mean? Remember in the ships back in those times, they had the oars. You remember the oars that would kind of stick out on the lower part of the ship? They have all these oars, and these men will be rowing. They'll be rowing, but you can't see them. All they're doing is executing orders. They're on the lower deck. Okay. Christ is the captain of the ship. We take his orders. You'll see the captain, but you don't see the oarsman's face. And I think the most profound thing is this about being a servant. We want to be seen. See, a servant doesn't want to be seen. A servant is too preoccupied doing the work, taking the orders from the captain, not trying to take the captain's presence. See, God will share his glory with none other, with no one else. Okay. And to pastors, he's not going to fill a church in competition with you. Okay. And not every church that is full, the question is, what is it full of? That becomes another question. That's for another segment. But are you doing work to be seen? Or are you a servant that is doing work not to be seen? You could least care if anybody calls your name. You're doing it as being, I like being on the lower deck. I don't need to be seen. I don't like doing my work like in Ephesians chapter 6 with eye service as men's pleasers. I don't want to be an eye service man, somebody that just like to move the crowd, you know. Um, nah, be on the lower deck. That's what a servant likes to be. Are you that one at the table? Can you serve and not be seen? Or are you too engaged in your selfish, ambitious ways? There's nothing wrong with being ambitious, but there is an issue when it is selfish. Ambitious, being an ambitious individual is good, has its place, but when selfishness attaches itself to being ambitious, you have an animal and a recipe for moral depravity. That's something for me to say one more time. When selfishness meets ambitious, you have a recipe for disaster and moral depravity. Being moral deprived, you will slowly deteriorate. Yes. God bless you.